We have the stats for Ninetales. We now know its ingredient list, we now know its ingredient rate, we now know its skill rate. So we're going to talk about that in this video. We're going to see whether that changes our opinion about how it compares to Typhlosion. But it also happens to be Entei event coming in a few weeks, and as it turns out, Ninetales is actually going to be quite useful, more useful than we had initially thought for the Entei event, and that's to do with the fact that it can drop corn at level 30. In this video, I'm also going to cover why I think the preference for dish type in the Entei event is number 1 curry, number 2 desserts, and number 3 salads. In most cases, I assume that you'll be able to cook the largest possible dish, hopefully by running a good camp ticket or running a Flareon with expand pot. And I assume that most of you guys want to run as many fire Pokemon as possible, not only to match the favorite berries, but to enjoy the +3 skill level up of the second week. +1 for the first week, which is still nice, but that juicy +3 skill level up only applies to fire Pokemon. So if you ever want to experience the game like a whale would normally enjoy the game because they have more main seeds, you get to experience this for a short period, but only if you run a full fire team. In other words, we're going to try and optimize your fire team so that you can use as many fire Pokemon as possible. I'll also cover questions like which week should you use the good camp ticket on, and which week should you spend your easy travel ticket to try and force the correct dish type, because some of you might have limited numbers of these items. For me personally, I'm going to run good camp ticket on both weeks, and on both weeks I'm going to try and force curry, but I know that not everyone has all of these items to spare. Welcome back to another Pokemon Sleep video. It's Bro Vinny here. So this video is about both Ninetales and Entei's event. As usual, I'll be using Rainix calculator for most of the stats and also comparisons. As you should know by now, Ninetales is a berry specialist that has this main skill, Energizing Cheer, which means it has a chance to heal a random Pokemon on your team. Approximately 50% of the time, it will trigger on the lowest energy Pokemon. Its skill trigger rate, it's 2.5%. That means that every time your Pokemon, your Ninetales produces something like an ingredient or a berry, it has about 2.5% chance of triggering this skill. But that in itself should mean absolutely nothing because you haven't accounted for the speed. So what I'm going to do now is take a look at how good Ninetales' skill actually is in comparison to similar Pokemon. So here I'm filtering for only Pokemon that has Energizing Cheer S. That includes berry, skill, and ingredient specialists. And then I'm going to sort them by the expected skill count in a day. Now, obviously, the skill specialists are going to take the top spots for this comparison. So we've got Slowking being at the top of the Energizing Cheer skill trigger rate in a day, followed by Leafeon, Slowbro, and Wobbuffet. Amongst non-skill specialists, well, there's only 2 Pokemon that do this. There's only Comfey and Ninetales. And Ninetales is a little better than Comfey. Not a huge amount, it's a little better. But unfortunately, the skill rate is still very low. Now I'm going to input some pretty neutral stats here and neutral nature, and my sleep time is 8.5 hours, 100 sleep score, and look at how many times these Pokemon actually trigger that skill. Ninetales triggers that skill just about 1.6 times in a day, so 1 to 2 times, which is not a lot. This is not enough in order to maintain your entire team's energy throughout the day. Even if we were being optimistic and say Ninetales triggers twice a day, it would only provide you with, at level 6, assuming you will actually invest that much seeds in a Ninetales, and it's not my recommendation that you do, you would only get about 100 heal in a day. And if we compare it to the best healer in this game, Gardevoir, which triggers about 3 times a day if I had no skills at all. Of course, you wouldn't actually invest in a Gardevoir that didn't have any skill trigger. So what I should actually do is put in skill trigger here for Gardevoir. Let's just say put skill trigger up, main skill chance up, and let's say Gardevoir triggers about 5 times a day. Now you might say that's a bit unfair because Ninetales, I didn't give it any skill trigger rate, but I would argue that it doesn't matter because Ninetales is not even a skill specialist. So in actual fact, you should be looking for berry finding anyway. You shouldn't be looking for skill trigger. But if you're concerned about me being unfair, let's give Ninetales a skill trigger build, which puts it up to about 2.6 times a day in trigger. But of course, Gardevoir is an energy for everyone Pokemon. In other words, it heals 18 per Pokemon. And if there's 5 Pokemon on your team, 18 times 5 gives you 90 heals each trigger. So if we were to have the level 6 main skill multiplied by 4.6 times in a day, so that's 90 heals times 4.6. In total, Gardevoir will give you 414% energy recovery. Whereas for Ninetales, let's say there's 50 heals per trigger and it's 2.6 triggers, it's only 130 heals. Which means that a good Gardevoir will be 3 to 4 times better than Ninetales at healing. So if any of you were wondering whether Ninetales can actually maintain good energy for your team during the Entei event or any other week, unfortunately, that's not going to be the case even if you max out its main skill level. Of course, during the fire event, you actually get a boosted skill chance as well by about 1.5 times, but that still doesn't help enough. And also remember that I actually already gave Ninetales some skill trigger when you really should be looking for Berry Finding S and maybe helping bonus. So in other words, this number is pretty realistic if it's level 6. But since Ninetales is not a really good healer anyway, would you spend all those main seeds to make it level 6? If you watched my main skill seed video, you would actually know that it's not just about whether the skill is good, it's also about how much you use the Pokemon. If you happen to think that you have the best Ninetales in the world, that you will use it in every team, every area that you go to, then it may be worth some main seeds. But I think that Ninetales overall still isn't as good as Typhlosion. I don't really think it's worth you main skill seeding. Now I'm going to go through some simulations in order to prove that Typhlosion is better now that we've got all the skill trigger rate and ingredient rates. So let's take a look at if we were able to maintain both Pokemon at maximum energy so that we only look at their berry production. What I do is in the calculator, I set to always full pack, and I assume that I have maybe a Gardevoir on the team so that both Pokemon will maintain very high energy level. And then I gave both Pokemon the exact same stats, Berry Finding, Helping Bonus, Helping Speed M, and both getting Adamant, and then have 4 Pokemon as teammates who all have Helping Bonus. You can see that Typhlosion is slightly better than Ninetales by approximately 5 to 10%. Because I turned on always full pack, that means that it doesn't count any ingredients or any skill trigger at all. Now you might argue that maybe Ninetales does healing so that it can maintain energy better in order for it to produce more, whereas Typhlosion does Charm Strength S, so how are we going to compare those two different skills? Of course it's going to be situational, but what we can do is remove healing. So let's say I don't have any energy for everyone healing on the team. The only healing I get is from the 100 sleep score. So what I do is now I go to default, which is not always full pack. So I go back to default. Now in this situation, I've given both Pokemon 4 main skill seeds. Typhlosion can evolve twice from Cyndaquil, so it automatically goes to level 3. Plus 4 main skill seeds, it goes to level 7 main skill. Vulpix of course can only evolve once and it gets 4 main skill seeds and then still reaching maximum skill level, but the skill level for healing is only level 6. But in fairness, both still get 4 main skill seeds. And even then, Typhlosion is still better because its skill trigger also provides strength. As usual, because I'm comparing berry Pokemon, I've completely ignored dishes because that just depends on what ingredients you actually need. So you can see my cooking is completely empty. All the ingredients are just being counted as base ingredient strength. So I think that's enough evidence to show you that even with the healing, and you can see the healing here because the energy and the farming rate is higher for Ninetales compared to Typhlosion. But despite the healing, overall Typhlosion is a better long-term fire type berry specialist. So that brings up the question of, well, why do we want to use Ninetales at all? Well, specifically for Entei and the Entei event, 2 things. One is Entei's main skill, Helper Boost, requires that you have multiple different species of Pokemon. So having 2 Typhlosion doesn't improve Entei's main skill. But if you have Typhlosion and Ninetales, you can improve Entei's main skill. Whether that's actually going to be stronger than just running 2 Typhlosions, that we can't account for just yet until Entei comes along. But the other advantage is that if you remember from my last video, we talked about how we were missing one ingredient for the strongest curry dish, and that is corn. And now that we know that Ninetales can do corn at level 30, it does 2 corn, and in fact during the Entei event, it will be times 3 because you get 1 extra ingredient every time ingredient does drop. It will help completing our recipes a lot better now. So if you happen to land level 30 corn, hopefully not level 30 beans on a good Ninetales, you might not need to prepare a lot of corn in the week before going into the event. Unfortunately though, if you're heavily relying on these berry specialists for ingredients, you gotta know that, well, Ninetales actually has a lower ingredient rate than Typhlosion. Under normal circumstances, that's actually a good thing. We want berry specialists to keep producing more berries, not produce ingredients. But in the Entei event, because of the +1 ingredient and that the ingredients matter to the recipe, it's actually quite good to have ingredients as well. So which ingredient are we going to be struggling for during the Entei event if we're running a full fire team? Of course, you could substitute 1 or 2 members to complete certain dishes, but let's hypothetically say you've only got fire Pokemon to work with. Now, don't forget that Entei itself is also a fire Pokemon, but probably in the first week, not many people will be running Entei, not only because, well, the main skill level is only +1, which isn't a huge benefit for you to rush into using Entei. So you could use it in week 2 where there's a +3 on the main skill though. But don't forget that Entei itself has an ingredient list and will get bonuses for the event. So what ingredients do we have covered for? Number 1, hopefully we've all got Charizard at this stage of the game. Being a fan favorite, I think everyone would have one, but I do know quite a few people have level 30 Ginger as opposed to Sausage. Now, my personal recommendation is Sausage to be focused on Charizard, but if you happen to get Ginger for this event, well, Ginger is used, but not in huge amounts. Again, just depends on what you cook, but in terms of the Keema Corn Curry, which is the strongest curry dish right now, it doesn't need that much ginger. We'll come back to that in a moment. So Sausage is needed in a much higher quantity. You can get Sausage with Arcanine at level 30 as well, but I would say that herbs should be the focus for Arcanine if possible. So Arcanine farms 2 herbs or 3 sausage at base, and that's because, once again, the strongest curry requires just that much more herbs. We could also have coverage for ginger and herbs by Typhlosion, beans and corn by Ninetales, and then milk and cacao in small amounts by Flareon. So using those ingredients, which of the 3 dish types have we the most coverage for? Yes, we can completely cover for the Inferno Corn Keema Curry. We can partially cover for Dream Eater Butter Curry, but only with Flareon, which is not going to be that good because Flareon only does 1 of each ingredient. Even with the event, it's only going to do 2, and no one else really does any of the other ingredients needed for Dream Eater Butter Curry. Other options, you could look at Grilled Tail Curry if you can do a lot of herbs and if you prepare a lot of tails in the week prior. So for example, running Vaporeon or Slowbro. If you happen to have level 30 beans on Ninetales and then you have enough sausage from your Charizard, you could look at Ninja Curry, but you'll need to prepare leek and mushrooms in the week prior. Spicy leek curry, another option, because we can do Typhlosion, we can do Arcanine, we can even do Charizard level 30 ginger. You just need to prepare leeks in the week prior. We also have some coverage for corn and milk for Limber Corn Stew. So you just have to look at this list yourself and see what's suitable for you to cook. But as you can see, for curry, we can cover for like a good 50% of ingredients depending on what your main dish is going to be. And it actually came as a surprise to me that desserts is the second best option for the Entei event. And that's because, once again, we can cover for cacao and milk, but just note that flour gift macarons, even though it's a very powerful dish, we can't cover for enough cacao. Hopefully you've got a Pokego++, so your Nightcap Pikachu can do a bit of cacao as well. But as you saw before with Flareon, it's just not going to give you enough cacao. We'll actually look at the numbers in a moment, but it's not going to be enough. It can do probably just enough milk for 1 or 2 macarons a day, but overall not enough. We can't cover for eggs and honey with our fire Pokemon, but thankfully with our corn scones, we can cover for ginger, corn, and milk. So we don't need a lot of milk, thankfully. So as long as you have some sort of focus on ginger, so let's say you have Charizard doing ginger level 30, or maybe Typhlosion doing a lot of ginger, then desserts might actually be a suitable option for you. With corn, try and get Ninetales to do your corn. So then the only problem is trying to get apples in the week prior to stack it up so that you can cook a few of these tea times corn scones. We will have a lot of trouble with Jigglypuff's fruity flan, so it's not my recommendation. It's also weaker than the corn dish. Explosion popcorn we can cover for corn and milk, Flareon and Ninetales, but then we'll need to farm enough oil in the week prior. Neroli's restorative tea, look, that's going to be a tough one. We can only cover for 1 of the 3 ingredients. And for Steadfast ginger cookie, we can cover for 2 of the ingredients. We don't need a lot of cacao, thankfully. So Flareon, again, for cacao, Charizard or Typhlosion for your gingers, but we got nothing for honey and eggs, so you need to prepare those ahead of time. Lovely Kiss smoothie, that's a reasonable option as well. There's some milk and cacao, so if you got a good Flareon, then that will help, but you could only do about 50% of those ingredients. And below that, none of these are really worth talking about because their recipe bonus is quite low. If that's all you can make, that's just what it is, but then it might be worth swapping out a fire Pokemon for something else that you can actually get the correct ingredients for. Hopefully matching other favorite berries of the week. The real problem lies in salads. If you're trying to run a full fire team, we can't cover for oil, tomatoes, or potatoes for the strongest dish, green grass salad. We also can't cover for leek and mushrooms of ninja salad, not to mention that both leek and mushroom are already slightly harder to farm since they're rarer ingredients. You can't farm them at base level, you can only farm them at level 30 or level 60. Of course, level 60 is not released yet. You can do some beans and ginger, but that means that your Ninetales will need to have level 30 beans, otherwise you'll be farming beans at base level. So we can cover for about 50%, but with the problem of getting rare ingredients to complete this dish. We can do Slowpoke tail salad because of herbs, and hopefully you prepared some Slowpoke tails because of ingredient magnet or whatever from the week prior, but we're going to be struggling for oils. Carmine fruit salad means you need corn or Ninetales. Now if you're aiming to do ninja salad and fruit salad, we got a problem because you can't have a Ninetales that has both beans at level 30 and corn at level 30. So you're going to have to pick one of these two as your main dish, depending on what type of Ninetales you have by the time the event starts. Or maybe you don't have a Ninetales at all, you never caught a good one, then you're really stuffed because there's nothing in salad that's good for you. Further down, it's even worse. Spore mushroom, there's nothing here that we can cover for. Thankfully, we can cover for overheat ginger salad with ginger and herbs. Of course, then you'll need to make sure that either your Typhlosion or Arcanine has herbs. And then below that, there's really nothing worth talking about here. Once again, the recipe bonus is getting quite low. We can cover for these 2 ingredients, but it's not my preferred dish to cook. We can cover for 1 of the 4 ingredients in potato salad, but otherwise it's just really nothing in salad. So my number 1 recommendation is if you land salad and you have limited number of tickets, re-roll your salad to either curry or desserts. If you have enough easy travel tickets, go straight for curry. Of course, this is just a general recommendation because if you don't have any farmer at all for a specific ingredient, so you never got a Beware, you never got a Comfey, you never got a Ninetales, well, there's no point of talking about keema curry. You're going to have to do your own assessment to see which dish type suits you more. And of course, don't forget that you have to have enough pot size in order to cook certain dishes. I do think that a lot of people will be able to cook this dish only because, well, Flareon is indicated for these 2 weeks, but also likely you'll spend 1 or 2 weeks with a good camp ticket because it's just so much benefit of running a good camp ticket during a legendary event with more Entei mains, more exchange items, etc. So with these 5 Pokemon, can we actually cover for keema corn curry, and how many times a day? In this analysis, I'm going to give these Pokemon some pretty average stats. So just having Level 50 Typhlosion with just berry finding, nothing else. Berry finding on Ninetales. I think these are sort of the most crucial sub skills for these two Pokemon to be good. So I assume that that's what you guys got, and I'm hoping that you guys got corn, but for simplicity, I'm going to go with the preferred option of ingredient lists. And then I'm going to go with triple sausage because no one else can do sausage unless we take Arcanine out of its role of doing herbs, which is a problem because then we don't have enough herbs. So this is what I've set up for as a simulation. Now I am giving ingredient finder to Charizard because ideally besides mono sausage, you should have ingredient finder. I think that's a pretty standard skill before anyone invests in ingredient specialists. Now, I'm not giving any skills or nature to the skill specialists because, well, they're not relevant to our dish discussion. I just want to know whether we can get enough ingredients during these 2 weeks. I'm not going to give any healing besides the 100 sleep score just to try and keep things relatively meaningful to our 2 weeks because, well, there's no healer here besides Ninetales, which doesn't do very much. And then, if you didn't know, you can actually add event bonuses in the Rainix calculator. So if you go to event bonus, and what we're going to do now, because it's not currently in event, the default isn't the event bonus. So we're going to have to do custom ingredient count +1 for fire type Pokemon. Skill trigger 8, custom 1.5 times, because that's what the developers told us in the news update for fire type Pokemon. So that gives us a reasonable estimate of what we should get for the event. Now I'm actually going to start with corn because corn 14 actually matches the 14 needed for Keema Curry. But that is 14 corn from a Ninetales that's level 50 that has berry finding S. That's 14 corn in 1 day. So that means we can only cook Keema Curry just the once. So using this team of 5, and the numbers are going to look a bit small, so you just have to trust what I'm saying here. I've got Arcanine producing 19 herbs in a day, Typhlosion producing 17 herbs in a day. So together, they produce 36 herbs in a day, which is more than enough to cover for the 27 herbs from Keema Corn Curry. It wouldn't be the case if either of them didn't have herbs, because if only Arcanine was doing herbs, we would already be under. So if you have herbs for Typhlosion and herbs with Arcanine together, they can also cover for 1 Keema Corn dish a day. Charizard is the crazy one. It does 80 sausages in a day. We don't need that much, so we only need about 24. Typhlosion by itself produces 11, maybe close to 12 gingers in a day. And that's actually enough for the Keema Corn Curry because it doesn't need a lot of ginger. It only needs 12. So perhaps it's by pure coincidence that these numbers actually matched up with the recipe quite well. We didn't talk about Flareon, so if you're short on ingredients, Flareon is the one to sub out for. Maybe switch in a corn farmer like the Were, or maybe swap in a Dragonite if you don't have herbs for level 30 on a Typhlosion. Something to help you top up those ingredients. Or perhaps you swap out Flareon and you run an energy for everyone healer like Gardevoir. So let's say we could keep everyone at 100% energy all day. We don't need to worry about Flareon. The numbers do go up, just not by enough. With herbs, we get close to about 2 Keema Corn dishes in a day. With ginger and corn, we're still about the same. With sausages, we have way too many. So sausages are going to be great for pot fillers. And then I'd say that you're really just hoping for those ingredient magnet from the Charizard to cover some of the ingredients that you're missing. But besides that, the things that we need to farm a lot of in the week prior, if we're doing this kind of build, this kind of team build, aiming for Keema Corn Curry, the biggest focus will actually be ginger and corn. Of course, everyone's Typhlosion, Ninetales, etc. will be different, so you have to look at what ingredient lists you've got covered for and how many in a day in order to know what ingredients to prepare in the week prior. Now for the last part of this video, I'm going to cover, well, which week should you use Good Chem Ticket and which week you should re-roll your dish type if you happen to get salad and you really don't want to be cooking salads. Now, this is a matter of opinion, but I'll give you sort of the pros and cons on when to use your Good Chem Ticket. I'd say that if you're after the biggest possible chance to get 3-star Entei, if you're normally free to play and you generally struggle to get like Master 19 or some huge numbers, using the good camp ticket in the second week is a good idea. Rerolling your dishes for the second week is also a good idea, so that you can maximally power up your Entei event Snorlax in week 2. And that's because week 2, chances are we're going to start with a higher drowsy power on Snorlax, just like we did for Raikou. We'll also have extra event bonuses because of +3 main skill level throughout the entire second week. And we get 1.5 times the drowsy power, kind of like a good sleep day on the last day of the Entei event. So if you really want to see that huge number, maybe for achieving certain achievements, or maybe you just want a better chance at getting 3-star Raikou, putting all your resources in week 2 kind of makes sense. However, I personally feel like there are a lot of benefits of doing it on the first week as well, by using your good camp ticket, easy travel tickets on the first week. And that's because by the end of the first week, if you didn't use your good camp ticket, you can't come back to use it. So let's say you finish the first week and you start the second week with good camp ticket, and you finish the second week of the event and then realize, hang on, in the exchange shop, you didn't really quite get to buy everything you wanted. Maybe you just missed out on an incense, or maybe you just missed out on the main skill seed. Look, I don't know how much things cost at this stage and how well everyone's going to do, but if you use the good camp ticket on the first week and feel like you're not finishing or purchasing everything from the event exchange shop, well, you have the option of spending 500 diamonds and then using a second good camp ticket. You just don't have this choice if you never used it on the first week to begin with. And yes, I know 500 diamonds is actually quite a lot for the average free-to-play player, but hey, this is Entei event. If this is not the event you use it on, well, at which point do you plan on using the diamonds? Is it for a main skill seed from a bundle? Well, there's probably going to be a main skill seed in the Entei event as well. So when we get information on the event exchange, we might have a better understanding of how well we'll do in terms of getting Entei mains to clear out the shop. And hopefully it's going to be easier this time to clear out the shop than the last time with Raikou's event, which is what the developers seem to be promising, but we just don't have the certainty of it. So if you want to be more sure, run good camp ticket on the first week, have the freedom to run it again for the second week. Let me know in the comments section below which dish you guys are actually going to focus on cooking for the Entei event. And good luck with your Ninetales hunt.